Welcome to Channel 18's coverage of the 2015 Nantucket Book Festival. I'm Charlie Walters, and I'm sitting in the Nantucket Island Resort's White Elephant Village with Leslie Lindsley and Terry Pommett, who in May of 2015 came out with the book Nantucket Cottages and Gardens, Charming Spaces on the Faraway Isle. They had earlier collaborated on Nantucket Island Living, which came out in 2010, and Key West, A Tropical Lifestyle, in 2009. It's nice to talk with you both. How did this idea come to be for this most recent book, and how did you decide what gardens and cottages to use and what not to use? Because you certainly had a wide choice.
Well, I'll answer the first part of that. You can do the second part. The first part is that we collaborated on a series of articles for magazines for about 3 years on living small, and it was our idea to show the charming cottages of Nantucket as sort of a backlash to the big house building craze, because we wanted to show how people are doing the responsible thing by conserving energy, but more than that, how elegantly you can live in downsized spaces because you can spend your money on perfecting with high-end materials and that sort of thing.
So how many cottages and gardens appear in the book?
25? I think.
Roughly. We have little snippets as well, so roughly, I would say 30, if you included like single shots of, not complete coverage of a home or a cottage, just individual shots that we scattered a few of those through there.
And we have a whole section on gardens and window boxes, and also tips throughout on living small and planting a cottage garden and all that kind of good stuff.
So you obviously approached cottage owners and garden owners, but I'm wondering, did the word get out, and did you have owners approaching you to say, please put me in your book?
Usually.
Leslie handled that because at the time she had her shop downtown, and people that knew her from her work, her books, her shop, there was a buzz going on. I didn't get that at all. I pretty much relied on past homes that I had shot, past homeowners. I had a library for some, and I knew what my focus was. So I would let Leslie sort of come up with the ideas, and then we would scout them and make a decision if we could use them or not.
And I have to say that the other thing is, too, that Terry and I have developed a trust from having lived here for over 40 years. And people know our work, they know us. They really trust us to come into their homes because they feel that we will represent them both visually and in words the way they would not be embarrassed to be represented in public. And I get emails all the time from people saying, I have a wonderful home, would you like to see it? And usually we drop everything to go see a good house. But there's an abundance here on Nantucket of wonderful homes. We'll never run out of material. We could have done 3 books like this.
Well, maybe you will.
Maybe.
How long did it take to put this together?
2 years and 1 season. And tell them why the extra season, because of the gardens.
Oh yeah, well, I guess that was the most difficult part of this was the garden aspect, because you can shoot the interior of a home almost any time, but the gardens, they have peak seasons, and they only look right at a certain time. So we had to sort of wait till the gardens looked right to photograph them, and a lot of times we missed we passed by the date, so we had to reschedule. Oh, we'll do that next spring. And so we had a number of places that we had a list of that we were going to shoot for our final couple of months of shooting, and that was the season, the add-on season.
The add-on season, yeah. Last year we had a lot of bad weather, cloudy weather, and people were, like the cottages, the little whale cottages out in Wisconsin, we definitely wanted to represent them, and Pochick, the Underhill settlement area in back of the summer house. And those people are here for a very short period of time. So getting into their houses was a challenge. They had guests, so, and then we'd make a date and it would be rainy. Now, while Terry is a master at lighting, and that doesn't mean just attaching a flash to the camera. I mean, he's a master, but we could do just so much, and a rainy day definitely affected our attitude.
Now, as you said, you've been here for 40 plus years. If you had done this book, say in the 1970s or the 1980s, it would have been a very different book.
Yeah.
But for the benefit of those people who haven't been here that long, how would it have been a different book?
There wouldn't have been such great design, mostly. I mean, we have a history here in Nantucket, a very rich history of appreciating things. We're a sophisticated bunch of people. We've been exposed to really good things. And also the whole country's been exposed to good design over, the last 20 years. And I think that people's awareness has made them decorate their homes beautifully. But more than that, there are people with the means and the awareness to restore and renovate their houses responsibly, respectfully, and really beautifully, which is a tradition here on Nantucket.
So there are more gardens, obviously, because there are more houses and more cottages, but better designed gardens as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know about the garden. Terry knows more about the gardens than I do.
I also think a lot of the design that we encountered was the homeowner's design. It wasn't interior designers coming in and doing the work for them. These people, and we're talking about all different levels of the economic strata, from the working class to the very wealthy. The design usually came from them and what they like to live with, hands-on type of thing.
And that's what makes a house come alive, is the personality of the people who live in the houses. And we only chose houses where people really did have a good sense of how they live. And for me, you can catalog things in a house, in a room, as they do very often in magazines, but I'm a journalist, and what I'm about is finding out why and how somebody did something in their house. And so the story of how they live and the input that we got from the people was what made the house come alive. And it also gave me the opportunity to make the book a little meatier, to have sidebars with every chapter on tips for living small. One house was, the people had lived on a boat, and it was only 3 rooms. And so they gave all kinds of wonderful storage tips that came from their living on a boat. And then we had people who told us how to entertain in small spaces. And not only just decluttering, that is not what small spaces are about, because a couple of the houses were those of people who collect art and artifacts, and they love living with it all, but they showed how you could arrange it artfully so that it's beautiful rather than clutter. So.
Now, what you said about the houses not having interior decorators as a rule, did the same sort of thing apply to the gardens? Were these professionally designed landscape gardens, or were there people who were doing it on their own?
Both ways.
Both.
Yeah. Some of the gardens definitely, I would say maybe half of them.
Yeah.
Half of them were taken care of by landscapers or gardeners.
Or landscape architects, maybe?
Yes, and
but,
they gave good
again,
insight.
It's a small space, and
Yeah.
it's so what can you have to have an idea and be able to live with a limited number of plants for the most part, and whether you like flowering plants, whether you like evergreens,
Herbs.
so it's I would say the owners had input to the design of their gardens, but they left a lot of the maintenance and the execution to the professional.
But what was good about that was I was able to interview all of the professionals who had planted these gardens. Or, for example, Craig Benny out at Surfing Hydrangea gave tips on how to cultivate hydrangeas. And Pete and Hillary out at Bartlett's Farm, I interviewed them about taking care of hydrangeas. We have tips from all the professionals on how you can create your own cottage garden. easily. And they're informal gardens that really don't need professional input.
I'm going to assume that some of these gardens, and maybe some of the cottages as well, are not visible from a public way or a street. They're hidden away. A lot of them are, but some are not.
You walk all over town, and they're behind picket fences, and they're all these little pocket gardens everywhere. You just have to be looking for them. And yes, many of them are
I got to
hidden.
peek into the yard too.
But now in some cases, unless people see these gardens in your book, they're not going to see them, period. Is that right?
Well,
Some of them, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, for sure.
well, also because they're captured at the peak of their growing season. I mean, we made sure of that. So people who are visiting here just may miss it. They may come after the roses are dead. But, if they're here in June or the middle of summer and they go out to Sconset, they're going to see those roses growing all over the cottages. It's just a fairy tale.
Let's step back a couple of years and talk about your previous Nantucket book.
It wasn't as focused as this one, although it included a lot of the lifestyle elements that we had in this book, in terms of how people live, a number of houses.
Oh, yeah.
But it included more. I mean, I was able to use more of my sort of iconic stock photography of Nantucket, imagery that I really liked, and I was happy to find an outlet for book form. So we played around. We had a little more leeway in what we, in terms of the, the big picture.
It was a broader subject.
This one was definitely more focused.
The thing that I loved about this is that while we were doing it, because it took so long, was the whole country was becoming interested in living small, in downsizing, and empty nesters. All the baby boomers are now empty nesters, and also young people. And so the subject became interesting to people all over the country. And the one thing about Nantucket Cottages that's great is that we have wonderful things in our homes and wonderful designs, and people can look at them and get ideas for their house no matter where they live in the country.
Even without these books, the two of you have long and impressive resumes here on Nantucket. And Terry, I can remember seeing your photographs back in the 1970s in the Quintessence Gallery on Main Street. Do I have that correct? Yeah. So that's how long you've been here. But you've been a professional photographer for, 40 plus years, and you've traveled all over the world taking photographs. Can you talk about that for us?
Well, I'm always taking pictures, and now I've stepped back from commercial work a bit, and I like doing these types of projects. With Leslie, we're always thinking of another idea, another book idea. But I also get to do a lot more of my own personal work, which is sort of like coming full circle. Travel photography is my real passion, and I've been doing a lot of that in the last several years.
Where have you been?
Well, I've been mostly to Asian countries. Some I'm revisiting, and some for the first time. So, India, Bhutan, in the Himalayas, China, the Philippines. Those are basically the newer ones. But then Europe too. I mean, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been to Europe, to France, and hope to go back again and do some more work there. And ideas come when you're on the road, and I'm not just I'm not taking snapshots for my memories. I'm always thinking about, there's a project here. I can see a project, and or I can see an article. I can see a story. I'm going to follow this lead a little bit more, and that's really fun. That's kind of photography I love the most.
Leslie, you've had 60 books published. You've had shops here and in Boston. You've done a whole raft of things. Tell us more about those.
Well, I'm glad to get back to my passion of writing. I was very, very fortunate in that I sold my first book when I was in graduate school. I always wanted to be a writer. I never wanted to be anything but a writer. My mother taught me this little craft of decoupage to get so that I could sell my work and get through graduate school, pay for it. My grandfather was an architect, and he made these little boxes, and they were picked up by stores like Tiffany's and Cartier's, and I was doing that. And somebody from Doubleday saw an article about me in New York Magazine about my decoupage and made me an offer to do a book on the craft of decoupage. That was my very first book. I was still in graduate school, taking journalism, trying to get a job on the New York Times. And this book sold, and I said, oh, they gave me a contract. I took all the money, bought my little house on Nantucket. Couldn't do that today. I still live on the same lot on Union Street. But that little cottage, every year that I sold another book, I expanded it into what is now my house. But it still has the feeling of the original Nantucket cottages, which makes me very happy. And I've been writing ever since. I do a book or two or three. Sometimes there were 4 books in a year. I was doing books for Better Homes and Gardens Book Club. I've worked with all the major publishers, never self-published anything. I was very lucky. And I feel I've been lucky to have had a complete career of supporting myself through my writing for 40 years. So, and I've written a newspaper column every week of my life, I think. I started when I was 13, writing for the Stanford Advocate, and I've been writing ever since. I always have a new book idea, and I'm very grateful that there's always an outlet and that I'm, still, quote, in demand. But the most fun is writing about Nantucket. I can't think of a better way to earn a living, can you?
No. What's your next project?
Well, I just signed a contract with Hearst. I'm not doing that one with Terry because it's in a partnership with Country Living magazine, and they're providing me with all the photography for that book. But I'm also working on a book that came out of this project called Upscale Downsizing. And hopefully Terry and I are going to work on that one together. But that will be everywhere. I mean, we don't know where this one will take us. But it's living small but elegantly.
Leslie Lindsley and Terry Pommett, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Charlie.
And thanks to Nantucket Island Resorts and White Elephant Village for giving us this space for the interview. I'm Charlie Walters. Thanks for tuning in.